Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. I'm Jeff Rumberg, Managing Partner of MetricNet, and I will be your host for today's webcast on AI success stories. I want to thank you for joining me today. I want to welcome all of you, and I want to thank Bright Talk for inviting MetricNet to speak on this topic. Now, before we get started, I've got just a few administrative announcements to make. During our webcast today, all of you will be in listen-only mode. But if you have any questions during the webcast, you'll notice a questions button just below the image of my slides. During the webcast, you can click that button and type in your questions as we progress. I will wrap up my presentation a few minutes early to answer any questions that you've typed in during the webcast. Now, just by way of quick introduction, MetricNet's core business is metrics, benchmarking, sourcing initiatives, meaning outsourcing, and AI transformations. We conduct service desk, desktop support, and contact center benchmarks and outsourcing initiatives in virtually every industry. And we now have the largest database of service desk benchmarking data in the industry. Additionally, we've negotiated some of the largest IT service management outsourcing deals in the industry. And we continue to work with both managed service providers, MSPs, and their clients to develop contracts that are mutually beneficial to both parties. Now, some of you know me, some of you I've worked with, some of you I've served on the HDI board with, some of you I've done projects for, some of you we've worked on projects together, but not all of you know me. So let me give you just the real quick thumbnail sketch. I've been in the industry now for more than 3 decades. I launched the industry's first help desk benchmarking consortium and the first call center benchmarking consortium. And I grew that first business, it was called the Verity Group, into a sizable company and sold it to Gartner. Subsequent to that, I worked at Gartner as their Executive VP for global benchmarking, was there for a number of years, and then went out on my own again as the founder of MetricNet. MetricNet works with more than half of the global 2,000, meaning the largest corporations worldwide. I personally speak at industry events a dozen or more times a year. I've published numerous white papers on IT service and support, as well as contact center. And I've spoken at virtually every annual HDI event. These are the national events, Service Management World and Service World Live. Spoken at virtually every event since the inaugural event in San Francisco at the Moscone Center in 1992. So I've been around for a while, and the advantage of that is that I can share my experience with you, tell you what I see in the industry. That's informed not just by my experience, but also by the benchmarking data that we collect, which is the largest by far of any organization in the industry. So we can tell you the direction that certain metrics are going. We can tell you how AI is being impacted by looking at metrics like self-help, self-service, looking at metrics such as agentless resolution, and so on. Now, if you're interested, you can download today's presentation. We also have a white paper called the Zero Touch Service Desk. Click on attachments and you'll be able to download those. The Zero Touch Service Desk, I made a presentation at the HDI Service World Live Conference in Denver last month. And I spoke on the Zero Touch Service Desk, and there is an accompanying white paper, which again, you can download from our website. We have a poll today towards the end of our webcast, and I'll invite you to respond to that poll when it comes up. And of course, we're always interested in knowing what you think of our webcasts and how we can improve our webcasts. So I'd ask you to leave us any feedback that you would like when you exit our webcast today. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Everything I present today is empirical, meaning that we've observed it in the marketplace. There's nothing academic or theoretical about what I'm showing you. We simply observe what's going on when it comes to AI and machine learning and what those deployments look like in IT service and support for service desks, desktop support, field services, vendor support, and so on. This is informed by more than 4,000 service and support benchmarks since the founding of MetricNet. We have the largest global benchmarking database where we track more than 70 metrics, everything from mean time to resolve and customer satisfaction to first contact resolution rate and average speed of answer or average speed of response if we're looking at a non-live channel such as chat or the web submit channel. We've also identified and cataloged and defined almost 120 industry best practices, which cover everything from support strategy, human resource management, ticket handling processes and procedures, technology, the discipline of performance measurement and management, and finally, what we call stakeholder communication. So what you're going to see over the next 40 minutes or so are our observations from our benchmarking, from the contracts we negotiate for our clients, from the AI transformation projects that we have worked on. We're going to share some success factors with you and some success stories. Now, if you were on our last webcast, some of this will be a review for you. And I did that deliberately because before we launch into case studies and success factors, I want there to be a common vernacular. I want to give you some paradigms that you can work with that give you a way of thinking about AI and machine learning and IT service and support. And I do know that some of you were on the last webcast. So I'll get through this review section fairly quickly, but the benefit of this is that it creates a foundation from which to discuss these success stories in AI and machine learning. So the first thing I'd like to introduce is the maturity spectrum in AI. Left-hand side of this diagram are the less complex automations, things like self-help, self-service. Some don't even consider that to be AI, but these would be the portals where a user would go, they type in a natural language query search, and one or more solutions are presented to them that they can self-implement. Again, many don't consider that to be AI, but just for the sake of completeness, I wanted to include it at the far left of the spectrum here. On the far right, we have the machine learning tools, which are endpoint bots, or in some cases, tools that ingest massive amounts of data from your ITSM system, your telephony system, your remote control system, your knowledge base, if you have a separate knowledge base from your ITSM system. And they compare that data to historical data. They look for anomalies, that is, patterns that are unusual. And through massive computing power and big data and identification of these anomalies, the machine learning makes a determination as to whether or not the anomaly is something that needs to be addressed. Could be auto-corrected, an alert could be sent to IT, machine might be taken offline. There's a lot of corrective actions that might be taken. But on the far right here, what you have is the preemptive elimination of tickets before they impact users. And that's the holy grail of service and support. If we can eliminate all tickets through problem management, which, by the way, has been largely automated with AI and machine learning tools, which is why you see in the middle of the maturity spectrum here, automated idle, the big three, problem, incident, knowledge management. But the holy grail is if we can eliminate all tickets before they impact users, that's great, because the ultimate goal of service and support isn't about getting the best customer experience. It isn't about reducing your total cost of ownership. It isn't about getting the best speed of answer and the highest first contact resolution rate and the highest first contact and the quickest mean time to resolve. Those are important in and of themselves, but what we're really trying to do is make end users more productive. And if we can eliminate tickets altogether, we are returning the maximum productivity to those end users. You know, it's interesting, when I negotiate on behalf of our clients, these are, as I mentioned earlier, Global 2000 corporations, and they're negotiating an outsourcing deal. One of my favorite questions to the managed service providers is, what is the number one strategic goal? of service and support? And I've asked that question hundreds of times, and no one has ever gotten the right answer, which is to make users more productive. We do that by returning them to service quickly, or better yet, eliminating the tickets altogether. Because on average, each ticket consumes about 2 productive hours from every user. So password reset isn't going to consume much time on the part of the user. But a complex how-to about electronic medical records, for example, or other common applications in Oracle and PeopleSoft, those do consume more time. And on average, every time a user needs help from service and support, they lose about 2 hours of productivity. Now, this is going to factor into one of the case studies that I present a little bit later. And think about returning 2 hours of productivity every time you eliminate a ticket, multiplied by the number of those tickets you have on a monthly basis, and then monetizing that, turning it into a value. If you're returning 10,000, 100,000, 1 million hours of productivity per year to your end users, that adds up to a lot. And that is the number one goal of service and support, is to make users more productive. And the holy grail of that is 0 tickets. That is preemptive resolution, identification and resolution, so that what would become a ticket that impacts 1 or more users, either an incident or a service request, is eliminated preemptively. You may have heard the term zero touch. That's the far right of this diagram. You may have also heard the term agentless. They mean the same thing. It means that a user gets a resolution without any intervention from an agent. No one's achieved that 100% yet, but there are some that have gotten to 60, 70, 80% zero touch, agentless resolution. But I want to introduce this paradigm because it's going to play into some of the comments that I make as I go through today's slide deck. So moving left to right, self-help, self-service, auto password resets, which interestingly enough, the number one category of ticket when I got started in this industry over 30 years ago was password reset. Today, number one category of ticket is still password reset. And there's really no reason for that, because there are good tools out there that enable users to self-authenticate, and you can eliminate most of the agent-assisted password resets that you encounter. The average in the industry is almost 30%, so around 27.5%, 28%. You can eliminate most of those. You'll never eliminate all of them, but you can eliminate most of those using an effective password reset tool. And herein is one of the success factors I will communicate throughout this presentation, which is that look for the easy wins. Auto password reset is one of those, the so-called low-hanging fruit. Likewise for voice and chat bots. This is proven technology. We've seen organizations that have pushed their voice and chat bot volume, I should say, to more than 50% of their total volume. These are proven technologies. It's not new stuff. Now, not everything can be resolved by a voice and chat bot, but if you can get to 50+% resolution with voice and chat bots and eliminate another 10, 15, maybe 20% of your volume through password reset tools, you're already close to 70% agentless resolution or zero touch. What's overlooked by many organizations is that IDLE, which is and I'm sometimes labeled anti-IDLE, which I'm not. I think IDLE has done some good things for the industry. We have a common vernacular, for example. We know the difference between a problem and an incident. We know what change management is. We know what incident problem knowledge management is. But our clients, by and large, have spent a lot of money on IDLE, and they don't have anything tangible really to show for it, except for some rare circumstances. But my belief has always been that if you're going to spend time on something, you should be able to measure the effect. So if you put 1,000 hours a year into IDLE, or 10,000 hours a year, or you spend $1 million or $10 million on IDLE, you should be able to measure something along the lines of better, faster, cheaper, meaning higher quality outcomes, quicker resolutions, lower cost, specifically lower total cost of ownership. Yet, we don't have those case studies. I've been looking for them for many years. So the human resource labor-intensive approach to IDLE has not been very successful. What is starting to show success now are machine learning tools that can automate knowledge management, that can automate incident management, that can automate problem management. So I think when we look back on the long history of IT service management and idle specifically, people will recognize that idle had an inflection point about the time that machine learning tools gained widespread adoption in IT service management. We now have examples of IT support organizations that have had success with idle by automating it through machine learning. The reason the human labor approach doesn't work to idle is because it's generally assigned to an individual. An individual may be put in charge of one or more of these disciplines, and that person usually already has a full-time job. And so the work they do on idle is kind of secondary to their main responsibilities. Not only that, but there's a lot of turnover in IT service and support. And so somebody's responsible for problem management for 1 year, and then they move out of that job. Somebody else has to take that over. So you get very little continuity, and it just doesn't get the attention that it deserves if you want to get the outcomes. And I like the outcomes of idle. What doesn't impress me is the process-oriented nature of idle. And in fact, I did a presentation at one of the HDI conferences last year. It was called Idle Hacks. It talks about how to get the benefit of idle, incident management, get the ticket to the right person at the right place at the right time as quickly as possible, problem management, the root cause elimination of tickets. That is, you identify problems that are creating one or more incident, you eliminate those problems from a root cause perspective. And of course, knowledge management, capturing and reusing the knowledge required to assist customers. You can get to the end result without going through the laborious process of the training, the certification, the maturation. Most organizations never make it through that process. And so they spend huge amounts of time and money on idle, but they have nothing to show for it. We are starting to see some success now because idle is being automated by machine learning tools. Moving further to the right, we have the detection of anomalies. These are aberrant behaviors. Sometimes they represent problems in the IT environment. Sometimes they don't. But when an anomaly is detected by machine learning, that will be investigated either by the software, the machine learning software, or the endpoint bots, which can also be machine learning bots. And if that anomaly turns out to be something real, there will either be a self-resolution, that is a self-healing process that takes place, or an alert will be sent to IT so that IT can take action on that. That's what the auto alert notification is. Then the holy grail, far right-hand side, preemptive correction and resolution. Ideally, of all tickets, we'll never get to 100% preemptive resolution, but it's still a worthy goal, much like zero defects and 100% or total quality was an aspirational goal that served its purpose for many, many years. So we'll never get to complete zero touch, complete agentless, but it's still worthy of holding that out as the aspirational goal that we're after. So what zero touch is designed to do is dramatically get your costs down, reduce TCO, not just cost per ticket, but total cost of ownership, give the customer an optimal experience. We don't want to drive costs out and sacrifice quality of the customer experience. We want to preserve that and enhance it. And ultimately, again, the strategic goal of service and support, return productive hours to the customers, give them back as much productivity as possible. We can measure that, we can monetize it, and we can demonstrate that no matter how successful you are at reducing the cost of direct support at level 1, service desk, desktop support, field services, vendor support, level 2 IT or level 3 IT support, no matter how successful you are in reducing those costs, those pale in comparison to the value that you can create when you eliminate tickets from a root cause perspective, when you prevent tickets altogether. Again, rule of thumb, every time you prevent a ticket, you save a user approximately 2 productive hours. So that's what we're after. And you'll see in a case study a little bit later in this presentation that this can amount to tens of millions of dollars annually for a large organization. Okay. Service and support is very labor intensive. You can see here, this is a global model. More than half of your costs are agent or analyst or technician labor. Another 18% would be your non-analyst or technician labor. These are supervisors and team leads and workforce schedulers and QA, QC, and managerial people. And then a third or 30% would be your office space, your software licenses, your travel, your training, your office supplies, your insurance, all the overhead that's required to run this operation. But this is very labor intensive. And anytime you have a labor intensive function, the question is there some way to reduce that labor component? And throughout human history, we've been very successful at removing labor from labor intensive jobs. It happened in farming over a period of about 200 years. And at the advent of the Industrial Revolution, around 1800, the introduction of farming machinery over a 200-year period from 1800 to the year 2000, farming machinery and automation reduced the labor component of farming by 99%, while at the same time, the amount of farmed land worldwide increased 100-fold. So we had 4 orders of magnitude difference between 1800 and 2000. A 2 order of magnitude reduction in labor content, 99% reduction in the number of individuals involved in agriculture, and then a 100-fold increase in the amount of farmable land worldwide. And we see the continuation of this now with the application of pesticides and herbicides, and in some cases even planting the crops. But there's been a massive reduction in the labor component of agriculture and farming, and this is really what brought about the Green Revolution that you may have heard of or learned about. But anytime something is very labor intensive, the question is, how do we reduce the labor content? And over a 25-year period from roughly 1975 to the year 2000, the auto industry, once again, reduced the labor component of auto assembly, auto manufacturing by way more than 90%. The left-hand picture shows a chart from a General Motors assembly line in the mid-1960s. The chart on the right is a 2000 era, roughly 2000 to 2005 era picture of an auto assembly line with the welding bots. After the welding bots, you have assembly bots putting all the parts in the car. You have painting bots. You have, and the laborers on the left-hand side picture, those that were turning wrenches and involved in manual labor to assemble those cars, have been replaced by engineers that are behind safety glass and telling the welding bots, the painting bots, the assembly bots, telling them what to do and making sure that the work they do falls within the control limits of what they're trying to do in that manufacturing process. So this shouldn't be news to any of us. It's happened before in multiple industries, and now it's happening in IT service and support. And we expect over the next 10 years to see up to a 90% reduction in total cost of ownership around IT service and support, where AI tools, robotic process automation, machine learning tools, they take over the jobs of the human agents and analysts and technicians and largely eliminate the labor component of IT service and support. It won't be eliminated completely. We're never going to get to zero touch. We're never going to get to 100% agentless. But again, that's an aspirational goal, and we can move in that direction. Now, there's a silver lining to this, and I'll get to this towards the end of the presentation and talk about this transformation, just like in the auto industry, where we went from assembly line labor to automation. Same thing will happen here, where we go from a heavily labor-intensive IT service and support function to an IT service and support function that is largely automated, and there's the human resource component will be reduced fairly dramatically. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I actually saw a webcast advertised earlier this week, and the title of the webcast was "How to AI Proof Your Job?" Now, not all service and support, and it had to do with IT service and support, specifically service desk. Not all service and support jobs are going to go away, but the skill set required of those that work in IT service and support is going to increase dramatically, much like in the assembly line on this GM plant. we moved from laborers on the assembly line to engineers behind safety glass that were telling the bots what to do, that were managing those bots. Same thing is going to happen here. Not all labor will be eliminated, but what is left, those technicians, those engineers is what we call them, IT support engineers, they will have a skill set far in excess of the typical skill set that you see in IT service and support today. Now, one of the things that will happen is that we're going to make a transformation from the legacy service desk metrics to the AI and machine learning, or the zero-touch service desk metrics, where the cost metrics are focused less on cost per ticket and much more on TCO. The goal is to reduce that, cost per user per month, minimize that. Volume, we care a lot about the percent agentless resolution, tickets avoided, tickets per user per month. We want to see that going down. In productivity, it's not just the productivity of those working in service and support. We want to look at the productivity return to users. Again, the number one goal of service and support, make those users as productive as they can possibly be by eliminating service requests and incidents preemptively. Quality, traditional metrics there, FCR, CSAT, Net Promoter Score. Service level, mean time to resolve, MTTR, will be everything in the zero-touch environment. And then idle maturity. We're finally going to see some success with idle because the machines are taking it over, and they will do what, at least so far, humans have not been able to do, which is widespread, large-scale maturation of problem, incident, and knowledge management. So expect to see that going forward. If we look at the zero-touch metrics, here's the direction we expect them to go, and we've been able to demonstrate this already. Over the last couple of years, we see TCO dropping, cost per user per month going down, tickets per user per month going down, tickets avoided increasing, agentless resolution increasing, productivity being returned to users, ROI increasing, customer satisfaction and FCR going up, Net Promoter Score going up, MTTR decreasing, and then the maturity of the big three, problem, incident, knowledge management. It's only 3 out of 34 practices, but they are, in my mind, they are the most important of the idle practices when it comes to service and support. We expect to see widespread maturation of those idle practices. Just to share with you what some of the industry benchmarks look like for the same metrics that I showed you a couple pages back, the zero-touch metrics. Based on our benchmarks, TCO, we can't give you an average, a min, or a max because it really depends on how many tickets you're handling. If you're handling 1,000 tickets a month, your TCO is going to look a lot different than if you're handling 10,000 tickets per month. So we don't have a benchmark for that. But in terms of cost per user per month, we show average, min, and max, average $28.51 to support a user. This is for a service desk, $8.09 being the minimum in North America, $94 being the maximum. You can see average number of tickets per user per month, 1.14. Tickets avoided really depends on what your starting point is. If you're starting with 4 tickets per user per month, the max on the line above, 4.37 tickets per user per month, your tickets avoided are going to be much different than if you start at 1.14 tickets per user per month. Agentless resolution gets all the way up to almost 80%. Productivity return to users, hours per year, can be as high as 46. Think about that. A full week of productivity, more than a full week of productivity returned to every user in a large organization like a Walmart or a Wells Fargo or a Home Depot or an organization like that. Imagine the monetized value of that return productivity. And over on the right-hand side, you can see the average CSAT, FCR, Net Promoter Score, mean time to resolve for incidents. And then the maturity of problem, incident, knowledge management, the average is quite low, especially for problem management because it's so labor intensive. The most mature of the idle practices would be knowledge management, average maturity 2.9, high end of 4.9. Even problem management, if you look at the high maturity that we've measured in the industry, it's only 3.8 on a scale of 1 to 5. So these are some benchmarks to keep in mind, real data from the industry. Now, let's get into our case studies. First one has to do with a company called Autodesk. And they implemented chatbots. This is proven technology. And they've been very good about continuously fine-tuning those chatbots. And what they've seen over 2 years is a 30% decrease in response time. So there's two MTTRs. One is a response time, one is a resolution time. They've seen a 15% increase in CSAT, 40% reduction in AHT, average handle time. That's massive. And a 90% FCR. There are very, very few service desks in the industry that reach 90% first contact resolution rate. It's almost unheard of. Fewer than 5% of service desks in our benchmarking database achieve a 90% FCR. Now, the three dimensions of competition are cost, quality, and cycle time. And every one of those is addressed here. Decrease in response time, cycle time. Increase in CSAT and FCR, quality. Resolution time, 40% reduction. There's your time. So cost, quality, cycle time, better, faster, cheaper. That's not just a cliche. That's what every AI implementation should be able to prove and demonstrate. That's what we haven't seen up to now in IDLE. Where's the better, faster, cheaper for IDLE? I haven't seen it, except where machine learning has gotten involved and learned problem management, knowledge management, incident management, and automated those so that we've seen rapid maturation of those. And we do now see better, faster, cheaper outcomes as a result, particularly of automated problem management. So this is the Autodesk case study, a couple of years in the making. Microsoft, like a lot of organizations, it took them a while, and the learning curve is steep, by the way, not so much on voice and chatbots, but especially on machine learning tools, which I've seen some good demos of machine learning AI and endpoint bots that are also a form of machine learning, but every organization encounters hurdles when they implement their AI. Nevertheless, what Microsoft saw in their consumer tech support was a 20% improvement in customer satisfaction. That's pretty significant. And they're now resolving 40% of all support requests without human intervention. So they had a 40% agentless resolution rate. That's huge. Let's look at IBM. Now, one of the things you'll take away from this is that they show here the reduction, 50% reduction in time that their IT support professionals spend on so-called repetitive tasks so they can work on more proactive things like problem incident and knowledge management, like improving their technology, like teaching the bots. 70% decrease in MTTR. But once again, they experience challenges. Even IBM and Microsoft experience challenges when they endeavor to implement their AI and machine learning initiatives. So any organization can expect to encounter these challenges. But if you do your homework up front and your business case is sound and you're persistent, as you're tenacious, you will see success in your AI and machine learning initiatives, specifically your AI, your non-machine learning AI initiatives, voice and chatbots, password reset tools, IDLE maturity. And then at the machine learning end of the spectrum, as I mentioned earlier, what we have is software that takes a huge amount of data from your ITSM system, your telephony system, your VRU and your ACD, your knowledge base, your remote control system, whether it's BombGuard, LogMeIn, whatever it is. And it looks at that data, compares it to past history, looks for patterns. If you typically handle 50 Outlook calls a day and suddenly that spikes to 400 Outlook calls, there's an anomaly that needs to be addressed. If you have typically 30 EMRs, electronic medical records call in a day, and it suddenly jumps to 300, there's an anomaly. Moving on now, this case study is about IBM and specifically Watson, and how IBM was able to reduce the number of repetitive tasks by 50%. These are tasks that their agents would typically work on. This allowed them to focus instead on proactive activities, things like maturing, problem incident, and knowledge management. At the same time, they reduced their mean time to resolve by 70%. Very significant wins. However, on the right-hand side, look at how IBM, even IBM and Microsoft, and Autodesk experienced these challenges. In the case of IBM, it took them longer to train Watson to operate as an effective AI copilot, AI tool than even IBM expected. So these are notable success stories, but they are not without their challenges. And you can expect the same thing in your own AI initiatives. Now, there's a couple of other case studies I'd like to go through, but in order to get the most out of them, it's helpful to review the economics of zero touch or agentless resolution. These data, that is the cost, the fully loaded cost of resolution at different levels in the organization, are from 2023. If we start on the far right-hand side, we see that the average cost of resolving a vendor ticket was about $600. These are averages. Now, the variance around those averages is quite large. So I want to be clear about that. We've seen vendor tickets resolved for $50,000. We've seen them resolved for $50, but $600 is about the average. Likewise, for field support, the average field support ticket in North America is resolved for about $220. When a ticket gets escalated to IT support, like a NOC or an application group, typically that's about a $100, $104 ticket. Desktop support last year, fully loaded cost was about $69 a ticket. Level 1 service desk, $22 a ticket. Self-help, self-service, this is not self-submit. This is actually a user going into a portal and typing in a natural language query search and getting one or more solutions that they can then implement themselves. So it is agentless. On average, when you drive significant volume through a self-help, self-service portal, the amortized cost of that resolution, direct cost, is $2. That does not take into account the time that the end user spends in that portal, which is a significant consideration. Voice and chat bots, what we would call level minus 0.5, on average, about $2 per voice bot resolved incident, $2 per chatbot resolved incident. And then we get into, on the far left, problem management. If you can eliminate problems that are driving one or more incidents, you look at problem velocity, which is the average number of incidents generated by a known problem in a given month. You focus on the high velocity problem. So if you have a problem that's generating 10 incidents per month and another problem generating 1,000 incidents per month, you're going to focus on the one with the high velocity that's creating 1,000 incidents per month, because if you eliminate that underlying problem, you eliminate those 1,000 tickets or close to those 1,000 tickets on a monthly basis. And again, this is largely being automated by the tools that we're now seeing on the market, the machine learning tools we're now seeing on the market. Then we have seek and destroy, search and destroy. These are endpoint bots and machine learning tools, which, as I mentioned earlier, will take in huge amounts of data, compare it to historical data, identify anomalies. It's seek and destroy, search and destroy. That's level -2. So these are the economics of shift left and zero touch. And to the extent that you can shift left and you can automate the shift left process, eventually tickets fall off the left-hand side of this and you reduce the number of tickets on a per capita basis. So you go from 1 or 1.5 tickets per user per month to 0.8 tickets, 0.6, 0.5 tickets per user per month. That's really the holy grail, to get it down to 0 agent-assisted tickets per user per month. That reduces the direct cost of support. But ultimately, what you're trying to do is get it to 0 tickets per user per month, which returns the most productivity to those end users. Now, I went through these case studies in our last webcast, so I'm just going to touch on them very briefly because I did go through them in our last webcast. But this is an insurance company that initiated a machine learning AI initiative, and you can see how their level -2 resolution increased dramatically over a 1-year period of time. They went from nothing resolved preemptively to 4,700 tickets eliminated on a monthly basis. Level -1, keep in mind that self-help, self-service. They went from, level -1 is problem management. They went from no problem management to eliminating 3,600 tickets per month using problem management. Your level 0 would be your self-help, self-service. That number increased dramatically. So across the board, you can see how they have shifted left. Their total cost of ownership in support, which is the cost of support at every level added up over the course of a year, they were spending $116 million per year on IT service and support. Now, it's a large enterprise. You can see that they have 68,350 employees. When they started a year later, they were at 71,600 employees. So this is a big enterprise, but they were spending $116 million a year on service and support. After they introduced their AI and machine learning initiative, they got that number down to 79 million. So over the course of a year, their success was that they reduced TCO by 37 million. And this does not even account for the return productivity to their end users. They got there by establishing performance targets for their AI metrics. And I shared some of those benchmarks with you earlier, and I'll share some top quartile numbers with you in a few moments. They put in place voice and chatbots, proven technology. They automated their knowledge and incident management. And they adopted an AI tool that did have L-2 seek and destroy capabilities, and also automated their problem management. Another case study, this one is from a retailer. We're looking at slightly different metrics here. But if you go to the very bottom line, you see that over a 2-year period, they went from 1.11 agent-assisted tickets per user per month. So this is on average number of users. You can see that up in the top row there. Number of users divided by the ticket volume, or the ticket volume divided by the number of users. They were at 1.11 tickets per user per month. 2 years later, 24 months later, they had reduced that by more than 50%. They were down to 0.51 tickets per user per month. Now, this graph, I showed this in the last webcast. I won't go through it again here, but it basically graphically shows how they reduced their tickets per user per month dramatically as a result of AI and machine learning, problem management, and self-help, self-service. Here's the bottom line. Agent-assisted ticket volume dropped from 61,520 to 30,002 per month. Go back here. Here's a 61,520. Here's a 30,002, month 24. Same thing. The next line, number of users increased from 55,270 to 57,998. Similar to the insurance company, although again, this is a retailer. Tickets per user per month, I showed this already, dropped from 1.11 to 0.51. When we monetize that, the reduction in the number of tickets per month multiplied by 12, which is the reduction in the number of annual tickets, assuming the 2-hour productivity loss rule, which has been demonstrated to be roughly accurate using industrial engineering time and motion studies, we can estimate that this retailer saved about 756,000 productive hours with their end users. That is the equivalent, given that an FTE works about 1,800 hours per year. That's the equivalent of 420. So you divide 1,800 into 756,000, you get 420 FTEs. An FTE in North America, fully loaded cost of salary, benefits, and overhead is about $120,000. So 420 FTEs times $120,000 is a monetized value of more than $50 million. That's what they saved by returning productivity to their end users. That pales in comparison to the cost, the direct cost of delivering service and support. So it emphasizes again the point I made earlier, which is that yes, you want to reduce your direct cost of support, but the bigger thing you're trying to do is make your end users more productive. In the process of returning this $50 million in productivity, they also cut their MTTR by almost half and saw an improvement in CSAT from 83.4 to 92.7%. So 5 case studies. I mentioned a moment ago that I would give you some targets. I showed these same 2 tables earlier, but I didn't show the top quartile, which is highlighted yellow. The top quartile is what we typically recommend for establishing performance targets. Now, these would be for North America. For the cost number, all the other numbers are fine globally. They don't change globally, but the cost per user per month will change depending on your geography. You can do the currency adjustment. If you're in the Philippines or India, for example, your cost per user per month will be significantly less than that. But all the other metrics are fine globally. And again, what we tell our clients is that you want to get to the top quartile for your performance targets. And that's what we're showing here in the yellow highlighted columns on both the left side and the right side. And again, these are the AI machine learning metrics, or the metrics of zero touch, the metrics of agentless resolution. So those are some performance targets to keep in mind. Now, I mentioned earlier that the job requirements are going to change pretty significantly over the next 5 to 10 years. Currently, service desk analysts or agents or technicians are very reactive. They're focused on quick return to service. They obsess over things like speed of answer and mean time to respond or mean time to resolve. They're heavily focused on schedule adherence. And in North America, on average, a level 1 agent or technician or analyst makes about $50,000 a year. That number varies a lot. It ranges from a low of about $30,000 to a high of about $85,000. But the transformation that will happen going from analyst to service desk engineer is that the reactivity will become proactivity, preventive, and strategic. The quick resolutions become automated resolutions. Speed of answer and MTTR become, how do we eliminate these things altogether through level -2 and level -1, problem management, contact elimination and deflection into lower cost channels, schedule adherence, instead of that, engineering projects to eliminate tickets from a root cause perspective. And here's the real kicker. These engineers, where they exist, only about 2 or 3% of the total population of IT support professionals are in fact service desk engineers, but the average salary is more than twice the average service desk analyst salary at $110,000 per year. So that's what you can see going forward. And I showed this slide last time, but I think it's even more salient, even more germane this time. Start with the easy stuff, the password resets, the voice and chat bots. Those are mature technologies. Machine learning, be careful, because some of our clients, even clients that you would expect to be very knowledgeable about IT and machine learning, have been early adopters, and it hasn't always gone well. So this is one of those situations where it may make sense to be a later adopter of machine learning tools. You can do the voice and chat now, you can do the password reset now, and hold off for the time being on the machine learning. But you want to be measuring and tracking the AI and machine learning metrics. You want to set performance targets, and I just gave you some performance targets that you can use, yellow columns there, so that you can measure your success in AI and machine learning. You want to start upskilling your agents to become support engineers, and you want to learn how to make the business case for these new technology adoptions, determine the ROI, and compare it to the current state ROI, so that you are assured that the payoff from these investments in machine learning and artificial intelligence are going to be significantly better than your current ROI. In a moment, I'm going to get to your questions, but I do have a final poll, or it's the one poll that's in our webcast today that I'd ask you to respond to. This gives you a chance to respond or to schedule a free consultation with MetricNet. We can call you this afternoon, or we can call you next week. But if you'd like to schedule a free consultation to talk about today's webcast, to talk about anything related to IT service and support, we'll set aside a half hour and have that discussion with you. Now, on our website, you'll find our updated downloadable benchmarks, as well as a number of educational resources for service and support professionals. So these include 3 levels of granularity on our downloadable benchmarks, which, by the way, we've got them for service desk, desktop support, and contact centers. The core benchmark has 6 KPIs in it. The plus has 24 KPIs, and then the most granular, what we call the Pro, has 44 metrics in it. You will also find on our website a service desk ROI calculator, a headcount calculator, and also a template, a balanced scorecard calculator. Keep in mind that our webcasts are always free of charge. And if you like what you've heard today, I would encourage you to go to our website to sign up for future webcasts. We also have the only ITSM podcast in the industry, and this is where I interview key executives and discuss current insights and challenges in the world of IT service management. We have our on-demand benchmarks. These are customizable benchmarks that you can download from our website, customize them for your unique IT environment. And keep in mind that you can download our presentation today along with the Zero Touch white paper. And when you leave the webcast, we'd ask you to give us an evaluation so that we can improve these webcasts going forward. And that brings us to our questions. So let me take a look at the questions we've got. Okay, the first one is, how do you calculate the ROI of implementing AI in IT support, and what should you expect? Okay, ROI is return on investment. The numerator is return, the I is investment. So the return on any AI tool is going to be the cost reduction in your operating expense. And so if you go from 0% agentless resolution to 20 or 30 or 40% agentless resolution, you're going to save some money by doing that. What you want to do is quantify how much you're going to save, and then quantify the cost of the investment, the one-time as well as the annual cost of the investment to implement that AI technology. So the return will be the cost reduction, for the direct support. The investment will be what it is you're spending on that technology. And I would ask you, or I would suggest that you look for a minimum ROI of 500%, which means that the return is 5x what the investment is. So that's what you should be looking for. Second question, how have AI and automation impacted jobs in IT support, and what's the future look like? I partially answered that question earlier when I said that you can expect over the next 5 to 10 years to see a 90% reduction in the total cost of IT service and support. That's roughly the equivalent of saying that you can probably expect to see a 90% reduction in headcount in IT service and support. We're already seeing reductions in headcount around IT service and support as chat and voice bots mature and as machine learning technologies start to come online. Most of the labor-intensive work in IT service and support is going to go away. Those that are doing analyst, agent, and technician type jobs will migrate if they can make the transformation and the transition to engineers, but there will be about 10% as many engineers in service and support 10 years from now as there are technicians and analysts and agents today. So you can expect to see a dramatic reduction in the labor component of IT service and support. Next question, where are we in terms of hype versus reality for AI and automation in IT support? I think I've never seen a bigger gap between hype and reality. So the reality doesn't come anywhere close to the hype right now. The hype really started about a year and a half ago with ChatGPT. Everybody assumed ChatGPT was going to automate everything in the world. Well, some of the service desks I've worked with have made efforts to incorporate ChatGPT, but ChatGPT by itself is not responsible for a lot of automation that we see in this industry. Nevertheless, of course, AI is at a fever pitch in terms of pure hype. But if we look at the impact it's had on IT service and support, the reality is nowhere near the hype. So right now, I would say that we're at the maximum gap between hype and reality. It may grow even larger going forward. I don't know, but it's greater now than it's ever been. Now, eventually they do come back together. The hype catches up, or excuse me, the reality catches up with the hype, or the hype is readjusted to reflect the reality, or some combination of those two things. So eventually they will get into more alignment. Next question, what do you see as the major challenges when implementing AI and machine learning in IT support, and how can organizations best navigate these hurdles? The big challenges are really cultural in nature. Many organizations are hesitant to move in this direction, and many organizations mistakenly try and think through ahead of time What are we going to do with the headcount that is made redundant as a result of AI and machine learning? We think that's the wrong way to look at it. Your job is not to keep everybody employed. Your job is to manage resources efficiently and effectively, and especially make your users as productive as they can possibly be. So we still see some cultural resistance to this kind of thing as organizations scramble to find quote unquote new jobs for those human resources that will be displaced by technology. But keep in mind that IT service and support is pretty high turnover. And if you need to downsize your agent and technician and analyst headcount as your AI and machine learning tools mature and start to take over more and more of the manual tasks, generally you can take care of the headcount through attrition. But again, I think it's a mistake to try and solve the headcount problem before you've even started to implement your AI and machine learning. Let it unfold and then downsize through attrition. But to try and maintain full employment, meaning whatever your headcount is now, you want to keep that headcount the same in the future, I think that's a mistake, and it defeats one of the primary purposes of AI and machine learning, which is to dramatically reduce the TCO of service and support. Next question, how can organizations accurately measure and assess the success of their AI and machine learning initiatives and IT support? If you look at the metrics of AI and machine learning, and I showed those metrics early on in our presentation today, track those metrics over time and see if they're moving in the right direction. Is first contact resolution improving? Is TCO going down? Is customer satisfaction going up? Is mean time to resolve decreasing? And most importantly, are the number of tickets per user per month going down? If they're not, you're not having the effect that you want to. You want to see the workload decrease over time. You want to see the number of agent-assisted tickets per user per month decrease over time. So look at those AI and machine learning metrics, look at the targets or look at the benchmarks that I showed you, and then look at the targets. That was the yellow column a few slides back, and set your targets equivalent to what you see in that yellow column. Next question. What are the key considerations IT support professionals should keep in mind when looking at future trends in AI and machine learning? IT support professionals need to think about making this transition from analyst, agent, technician that is very reactive, that is concerned about quickly returning a customer to service, that is concerned about schedule adherence, that's looking at things like ASA and mean time to resolve, and think about how you can make that transition to support engineer, where you work on projects that eliminate tickets from a root cause perspective, where you're looking at returning productivity to your end users, where you're looking at minimizing and reducing the number of tickets per user per month. So be thinking about upskilling yourself, becoming as proficient as you can. Think like an engineer and a business person, not like a reactive technician, analyst, or agent. Last question. Can you share some practical tips for organizations considering the adoption of AI and machine learning in their IT support strategies? Yeah, I just shared those, and they are: start small. This is one case where it doesn't pay to be an early adopter. Go with proven technologies like password reset tools. You might be able to reduce your ticket volume by 20% just with that. And then look at proven technologies like AI and machine learning. There are also technologies that automatically grade the quality of your agent interactions. They'll listen to the voice calls, they'll monitor the chats, and they'll do so in real time. And they'll grade those tickets, and they'll provide real-time feedback for your agents and your analysts and your technicians. So start with proven technologies. Make the business case. Don't bite off more than you can chew. You don't have to boil the ocean. And I would suggest holding off on some of the more advanced machine learning technologies until you've taken advantage of the low-hanging fruit, the proven technologies. Okay, I think that was the last of our questions. I want to thank everyone for joining me today for our discussion on AI success stories. I hope you found it to be informative, and insightful. This concludes our webcast. I hope to see you on next month's webcast. This is Jeff Rumberg, Managing Partner of MetricNet. Thanks again.